The stars outside shimmered like scattered diamonds across a vast black ocean as Elias Voss stepped onto the interplanetary cruiser. Orion Sky. This was no ordinary shuttle. It was the most luxurious transport ever crafted by human hands, a flying palace bound for Titania, one of Uranus's moons. With its crystalline corridors, gravity-balanced floors, and panoramic lounges, Orion Sky catered only to the galaxy's elite. Elias didn't belong here. At least, not usually. Once a skilled space pilot for the United Earth Federation, now retired and working as a repair technician on dusty asteroid rigs, Elias had saved for 6 years to afford this ticket. First class, a single indulgence, dream he'd clung to since his first flight across the asteroid belt. He wanted to experience space the way the rich did, without pressure alarms or oxygen rations, without the hum of broken thrusters. Just once, a steward in a shimmering silver uniform scanned his ID chip. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Voss. Cabin 1A, right by the observation dome." Elias smiled. "Thanks. I've been looking forward to this." As he stepped through the soft glow of the ship's inner corridor, something caught his eye: two small girls, no older than 6 or 7, standing near the entrance to the economy pods. One held a tiny pink robot missing an arm, and the other clutched a worn blanket printed with starlions. Both looked worried, confused. A robotic assistant hovered nearby, blinking red. "Apologies, young passengers. There has been a clerical error. You were reassigned to economy seating." "But we're supposed to be in first class," the older girl said, her voice trembling. "Mom said we could look at the stars the whole way." Elias paused. No adult around. Just these two frightened children, caught in the cold system of interstellar bureaucracy. No one else seemed to care. Other passengers stepped around them, too focused on their luxury welcome drinks and holographic itinerary briefings. He stepped closer. "Hey there, what's going on?" The robot repeated the error. Elias looked down at the girls. "What are your names?" "Lyra," said the older one, "and this is Nova." "Well, Lyra and Nova, I think there's a solution." He turned back to the steward. "Can I reassign my seat?" The man blinked. "You wish to downgrade from cabin 1A? "Yeah, give it to them." The steward's brows furrowed. "Sir, that's a premier cabin. Observation dome, private stasis bed, molecular cuisine." "I know exactly what it is," Elias said with a soft smile. "And I'd rather these two see the stars than me." Within minutes, Lyra and Nova were escorted gently to the first class dome, their eyes wide with joy. Nova waved her robot in excitement. "Thank you, mister." Elias gave her a small salute. "Enjoy the ride, Captain." He found himself redirected to a mid-economy seat, not quite the crammed economy rows, but still light years away from the starlight-soaked dome he'd dreamed of. A tight bench, recycled air. A crying baby too rose up, but somehow Elias didn't mind. He leaned back and watched as the ship began to pull away from Earth orbit. The blue planet shrinking behind him. An attendant passed by, looking puzzled. "That was a kind thing you did," Elias shrugged. It felt right. The lights dimmed as Orion Sky entered slipstream mode. In the distance, through a small oval window, he saw the faint silhouette of Lyra pressing her face to the glass, pointing at some distant nebula. Nova's laugh echoed faintly down the corridor. Elias smiled to himself. He had missed the stars from first class, but he had helped someone else see them, and that, somehow, felt even better. The steady hum of the ship's slipstream drive filled the air, a low vibration that settled into Elias's bones like a lullaby. The mid-tier economy section wasn't built for comfort, but after years of cold bunkers and asteroid dust, Elias found it tolerable. He had a thin cushion on his seat, a semi-reclining backrest, and a tiny window that occasionally flashed with the purple-blue swirl of warp space. Not luxurious, but peaceful, at least for now. The gesture he'd made back at launch had already begun to fade into memory. He wasn't one to dwell on things. His instinct to help those kids had come from somewhere deeper than logic, a reflex born of decades watching systems fail the small and powerless. Maybe he couldn't change much anymore, but he could do something. Still, Something about the way that silver-suited steward had paused, watching him with a too-still expression stuck in his mind. Almost like he was scanning more than just his ID, but Elias shrugged it off. He'd spent too many years around jumpy fleet officers and overthinking every glance. The overhead lights flickered for a moment, then dimmed to the soft amber of long-distance cruise mode. Most passengers settled in. A few activated sleep pods, while others cinched holovids to their visors and leaned back. Elias simply stared out at the cosmos. Then came the jolt. It was subtle, just enough to shake his cup of recycled tea and trigger a quiet gasp from nearby passengers. The lights flickered again, this time longer. Shipwide notice, a calm voice echoed. We are encountering unexpected gravitational turbulence. All passengers, please remain seated. This is a standard correctional event. Elias is pilot. Instincts kicked in. That wasn't standard turbulence. Not this far out, and certainly not in well-charted lanes near Saturn's orbital arcs. He unbuckled quietly and made his way to the edge of the hallway, pretending to stretch. His eyes scanned the corridor, tracing the structural supports and vibration patterns. Another jolt, sharper this time. The intercom voice returned, slightly faster now. Inertial stabilizers are being recalibrated. Please remain calm. Crew members in sleek uniforms moved toward the front of the ship, clearly not trained well enough to hide the tension in their pace. Elias could tell they were nervous. Whispering into comlinks. One woman clutched a tablet tightly to her chest, glancing back at the passenger rows as if afraid of something. Then he noticed Lyra and Nova again, from his aisle seat. He could just barely see into the shimmering entrance of first class. The two girls were curled in their stasis recliners, surrounded by soft glows of entertainment domes. But Lyra had sat up, staring through the transparent hull section above. Her eyes were wide not with fear, but wonder. Elias caught her gaze. For a moment, she smiled and gave a small wave. He waved back. Then the ship lurched. It wasn't subtle anymore. Passengers cried out. Lights flickered violently. Gravity swayed. Something was wrong. Core navigation offline, the voice said. Flatly. Reverting to backup drive protocols. Gasps echoed across the rows. Elias instinctively gripped the nearest seat and reached out to steady an elderly passenger stumbling in the aisle. Crew ran past now, no longer trying to appear calm. Steward, he recognized one of those who had witnessed his seat exchange, stopped in front of him. You, the steward said, voice low and tight. We may need your help. Excuse me? You're Elias Voss, former pilot, Flight Division. We recognized your profile when you scanned in. Please come with me. Elias hesitated. How long had it been since anyone cared about who he used to be? But those two girls? And the eerie stillness overtaking the ship. Something told him this wasn't random. He nodded once. Let's go. The corridor Elias was led through was unlike the passenger area, sterile, narrow, and bathed in cold white light. The hum of the engines here felt louder, closer, almost like the ship's heart was beating against the walls. His escort, the steward who had recognized him, didn't speak again. Not until they reached a secure elevator hidden behind a panel. That hissed open only after a retinal scan. The lift ascended silently, a strange choice given they were in space. No gravity meant no up, but this ship, like many luxury vessels, simulated elevation to comfort human instincts. When the doors slid open, Elias found himself in a room that didn't match the rest of the ship's gleaming modernism. It was warm, soft wooden panels along the floor, bookshelves with real paper books, and the scent of jasmine in the recycled air. This was no command deck or emergency operations room. It was personal. Then she stepped in. Tall, graceful, and radiating an authority that needed no introduction. The woman wore a midnight blue tunic with a subtle emblem, stitched near the collar, a constellation arc wrapping around a silver star. Her hair was swept into a tight braid, and her eyes were the same clear shade of storm gray he had seen in Lyra. Elias Voss, she said, her voice calm but firm. You're exactly as I hoped. I'm sorry, do we know each other? Elias asked cautiously. I'm Captain Serafina Kale, she said, Chief Executive of Stellar Nova Enterprises. And more importantly, right now, Mother Tolera and Nova. Elias blinked. Your daughters? The ones I gave my seat to? She smiled softly, but it didn't reach her eyes. Yes, I saw the footage. The whole crew did. We monitor everything on this ship, including first-class cabin logs. Your choice wasn't just noble, it was rare. He shook his head. I didn't do it for recognition. I know, that's what makes it important. Serafina walked over to a wall panel and tapped a hidden screen. A hologram burst into life above the desk flight diagnostics, star charts, and a fluctuating gravimetric field that looked unstable. What you experienced back there, she said, wasn't natural. Turbulence. We were targeted. Targeted? Elias stepped closer to the display. You're saying this was a sabotage? No, she said quietly. Not sabotage, a scan. Someone out there is probing for weaknesses in our shields. We've been on their radar for months. Whose radar? She hesitated, then looked him straight in the eyes. The Sol Syndicate. One of the 3 mega-corporate alliances that control most interplanetary trade routes. Stellar Nova is the only remaining independent line. We're not just an airline. We're a resistance cell disguised as a transport company. Elias stared at her. You're running a rebellion. From a luxury cruiser? Not a rebellion, she corrected. A revolution of choice. Safe passage, ethical travel, freedom from surveillance, but that makes us a threat. He laughed dryly. And I just gave my seat to the children of the woman running all this? You did more than that, she said. You proved we were right to trust you. This ship has hundreds of guests, business leaders, artists, scientists, but you were the only one who saw 2 scared kids and gave up your dream seat without hesitation. Elias crossed his arms. Why? Tell me this now? Because I need your help again. There was a moment of silence between them. A distant pulse vibrated through the hull. You said you were retired, she added. But from the way you moved earlier steady during gravitational drift, you haven't forgotten how to fly. Elias looked at the hologram again. I haven't. She extended a hand, then come with me. If you're willing, you won't just be a passenger anymore. Elias glanced back toward the elevator, toward the life he'd left behind, and then he reached forward and shook her hand. The room dimmed as Serafina led Elias deeper into the command center, far beyond what the public ever saw. Sliding doors hissed open to reveal a long gallery, its walls covered in living digital maps of the solar system. Each planet pulsed in soft colors, and around them thousands of tiny symbols danced, ships, satellites, orbital stations. Elias knew this kind of interface. He hadn't touched a real command wall since his Federation days, but the muscle memory stirred. This, Serafina said, gesturing to the glowing stars, is the real Stellar Nova. Not the company, the mission. He stepped closer to one of the displays. A blinking red dot near Neptune caught his attention, tagged with the name Daedalus Drift. This is a war map. No, she corrected gently. This is a survival map. Serafina brought up a translucent overlay. It showed 3 massive networks, corporate trade lanes, defense patrols, and media control stations, all color-coded in sharp neon blues and reds. These are the syndicate routes. Everything passes through them, cargo, news, even emergency. Evacuations. You've seen what they've done. Cities blacked out for profit. Moons cut off because their ore quotas fell behind. We're not just trying to escape that. We're trying to outfly it. And the girls? Elias asked. They're traveling with you on a mission this dangerous? Seraphine's eyes softened. They're safer on this ship than in any syndicate-controlled habitat. And I want them to see the galaxy as it should be. Not how the corporations define it, Elias nodded slowly. The more she spoke, the more her cause resonated. He had witnessed the cruelty of the syndicate firsthand, the way it used rules as weapons and reduced entire colonies to forgotten data. After your act of kindness, Serafina continued, we ran a deeper scan on your background. You're not just a former pilot, you were decorated for rerouting a malfunctioning evac ship through a collapsing wormhole. Elias smirked. They gave me a plaque and 2 months of unpaid leave. Real generous. She chuckled faintly. I want to offer you something better. She walked to a control console and tapped a command. A door slid open at the far end of the gallery, revealing a smaller hangar chamber. Inside sat a sleek, matte black shuttle with a curved hull and twin ion thrusters. The nose bore the Stellar Nova insignia but modified, with wings stretching farther outward. A resistance crest. That's the Lumen Hawk, she said. Experimental stealth courier. Fast, nimble, armed only with decoys and MP webs. We use it to transport diplomats and sensitive cargo off-grid? Elias took a step toward it. And you want me to fly her? Not just fly, lead a new squadron. We're building a fleet of independent pilots. People who care more about people than profit, and we want you to train them. He stood silent for a moment, eyes on the ship. His hands itched with memory. There was something about the way it rested there, like a coiled bird ready to fly into the unknown. It reminded him of who he used to be, who he could be again. Behind him, a small giggle echoed through the corridor. He turned to see Lyra and Nova skipping toward them, a crewwoman close behind. Nova clutched her pink robot, now repaired and glowing. Captain Elias, Lyra shouted. He knelt to greet them as they threw their arms around him. So, I'm a captain now, am I? Serafina smiled. They insisted. Lyra leaned in and whispered, Mom said you're going to help save space. Elias looked up at Serafina, then back at the sleek black ship waiting for him. He smiled. Let's make sure we do. The hangar bay echoed with life. Technicians moved swiftly around the newly christened Lumen Hawk, performing pre-flight checks and calibrating the ship's stealth systems. Its polished hull reflected the soft violet lights of the docking chamber like liquid obsidian. Elias stood beneath its wing, his hand pressed lightly against the smooth metal, feeling the gentle hum of its core reactor. It was quiet power, waiting to soar. 3 months had passed since he'd agreed to join Seraphine's cause. In that time, the Orion Sky had returned from Titania under heavy Syndicate surveillance. The Syndicate suspected Stellar Nova of hiding something, but Serafina had been careful. To the outside world, they were still just a boutique space liner for the elite. But beneath that surface, Elias had helped turn the company's skeleton crew into a whispering storm: pilots, engineers, navigators, each one selected not by resume, but by character. Elias became more than a pilot, he was a mentor. Every week, new recruits arrived from across the solar system, people tired of watching the universe rot under control. He trained them in maneuvering, stealth, and decision-making under pressure. More importantly, he taught them why they were flying, not for rebellion, but to protect the freedom to choose, to live without surveillance, and to offer safe passage to the ones who had none. Lyra and Nova were always nearby, floating like twin moons in his orbit. When not being tutored or exploring engine rooms, they often watched his flight simulations. Lyra asked questions about every console and control. Nova, always imaginative, painted drawings of his ship defeating villainous Syndicate cruisers. With rainbow trails. Elias had found something he never expected to feel again: home. That morning, Serafina called him to the observation deck above the hangar. A sleek command terminal sat in the center, its glass surface displaying a new mission path blinking in green. We've received a distress ping from the Borealis refuge on Neptune's ice rim, she said. A Syndicate vessel has cut them off. No food, no heat, they're days from blackout. Too risky for a full fleet run, Elias noted, studying the star chart. But the Hawk can get in, Serafina nodded. Exactly. You'll take 2 stealth riders, small crew. No weapons. Just warmth and hope, Elias smiled. That's our specialty. She placed a hand on his shoulder. We've come farther than I imagined, but it all started with you. He looked down at the launch bay where Lyra and Nova were drawing chalk stars on the floor next to the ship's landing gear. I just gave up a seat. He said, You did what few would, she replied. And you reminded me why I started this in the first place. Later that evening, the hangar filled with crew members, engineers, and families preparing for the flight. As Elias approached the Lumen Hawk, a new inscription caught his eye painted. Just below the cockpit window in bold white letters, the Voss wing, 1 act, infinite echoes. His heart tightened. Nova ran up and handed him a tiny silver star. "For your dashboard." He took it gently. "Thank you, Commander." Lyra saluted. "Bring back the light." He climbed aboard the ship, feeling its systems pulse to life beneath his touch. The engines glowed, and the hangar lights dimmed in readiness. As the launch doors opened to the stars, Elias guided the Hawk into open space, the curve of Uranus. Glowing beneath them like a silent sentinel, a voice crackled through the "Voss wing, you are go for jump." He adjusted the controls, then looked once more at the silver star taped above his panel, and with a calm, steady breath he whispered to himself, "Let's fly." The stars stretched into lines as the ship jumped forward, a streak of hope cutting across the dark.